Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Eilon Levy. I'm a spokesperson here for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Thank you very much for joining us. Today marks 2 weeks since the October 7th massacre and Hamas's declaration of war against the state of Israel and the people of Israel. As Israel continues to collect and identify the victims of that barbaric atrocity 2 weeks on, Hamas continues to rain rockets on our towns and cities. To date, over 7,380 rockets have been fired at Israel since the outbreak of the war, and those numbers are from before the barrage at Tel Aviv in just the last hour. As Israel prepares for the next stage of our campaign to dismantle Hamas in response to the atrocities of October 7th, we are thankful for the unprecedented international diplomatic and material support to achieve that necessary objective of dismantling Hamas. Our objective is clear: victory, total victory against Hamas, and that will not change until the end of our campaign. Now, Israel, of course, welcomes the release of Judith Ra'anan and her teenage daughter, Natalie, from Hamas captivity as a result of international pressure on Hamas. We demand the immediate and unconditional return of all our hostages, and we expect to see the continuation and intensification of international pressure using all means at the disposal of the international community to secure their immediate and unconditional release and access to the International Red Cross. Israel will not rest until all of the hostages, from babies ripped from their parents' arms to elderly people, are returned to their families. As it stands, the Hamas barbarous terror organization holds at least 210 infants, children, women, men, elderly people hostage in Gaza and continues to commit crimes against humanity. I say at least 210 because there are still between 100 and 200 people still missing, because we do not know whether Hamas abducted them from their beds or reduced them to the sort of human ash that the Jewish people have not seen since Auschwitz. And I choose my words with all deliberate caution. Hamas cremated whole families alive. This is the evil that we were subjected to on the 7th of October, the evil we are fighting, and it is the evil that we will eliminate. Now, when it comes to regional evil, Iran, together with its proxies, continues to antagonize the region and spread its tentacles of terror. Our message has been consistent and clear. Israel is not seeking a war on multiple fronts. Israel is not seeking a war on multiple fronts, but if tested, we will respond with the overwhelming strength and might of the Israel Defense Forces. Now, finally, over the last few days, Israel has approved plans to expand operational activities, including a ground operation in the Gaza Strip. IDF units are currently training and ready for any missions. We will now take your questions, starting with some of the questions that have already been submitted to us in advance. The first question from Carrie Keller-Lynn from the Times of Israel regarding the defense minister's statements regarding Hezbollah's decision to participate in the fighting. Is there an acceptance that a northern front will open? Let me put it this way. Hezbollah has decided to intensify its attacks against our people and against our forces. That is why Israel has taken the dramatic decision to evacuate all civilians from 2 kilometers from the border with Lebanon, including the entire town of Kiryat Shmona. We're now talking about over 100,000 Israeli IDPs, people who have been forced to leave their homes, evacuated to get away from the fighting. And I would urge international media to include this in any reporting about movement of civilians inside the Gaza Strip. The fact that in Israel we have over 100,000 people who have left their homes in order to get away from areas that may see very heavy fighting, a point of absolutely vital context. We will respond firmly to Hezbollah's belligerency and aggression under Iranian direction as the need arises. We emphasize the state of Lebanon remains sovereign over its territory, and the state of Lebanon will be held responsible for any attacks emanating from its territory. We have another question regarding the initial consignment of humanitarian aid that went through the Rafah crossing this morning. In addition to the 20 trucks of humanitarian aid, what plans are there for additional aid and for dual citizens to leave? That's a question we've seen from more than one reporter. Yes, indeed. Today, the first consignment of humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza went through the border crossing with Egypt, the Rafah crossing. If this is successful, we hope that this will be a sign of things to come and a model for the continuation of future deliveries of humanitarian aid. Israel wants to see humanitarian aid reach the people of Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. That is the correct entry point for humanitarian aid. And we want to see it reach the civilians inside the Gaza Strip who have heeded our warning to evacuate the areas that are going to see especially intense fighting in the northern Gaza Strip, where the Hamas terror group has embedded the bulk of its terror machine deep underneath civilian areas. That's why we're asking civilians to leave as we pursue our goal of dismantling Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre and its declaration of war. Now, the state of Israel has only one condition when it comes to the delivery of humanitarian aid through Egypt, and that is that the humanitarian aid must reach the people of Gaza and not be diverted to Hamas. That is our right under international law. In fact, it would be internationally unlawful to allow consignments of humanitarian aid to reach the terror organization that perpetrated the October 7th massacre. That aid, donated by the international community, must not be requisitioned by Hamas, just as Hamas took control of 24,000 liters of fuel from UNRWA stockpiles just a few days ago in a tweet that the United Nations released and then quickly deleted. And we also demand that Hamas not be allowed to get its hands on humanitarian aid, as it has been abusing the generosity of the international community for many years, especially since 2014, when cement that was supposed to go into the Gaza Strip for reconstruction after Operation Protective Edge was systematically diverted towards Hamas's military machine and the construction of its tunnels under the Gaza Strip, the water pipes that we've all seen being dug up and converted into rockets. And we've been clear we will not allow international taxpayer aid and taxpayer dollars to be diverted to the war machine that perpetrated the October 7th massacre, and we will thwart any such attempts to divert international aid. A question from Elad Man from the Seventh Eye. When will the Prime Minister hold a press conference to answer questions? When a decision is made, we will update you. A question from Wayan News in India. Since the Israeli Prime Minister spoke to Prime Minister Modi, what kind of conversation took place? We appreciate the intense support from the government and the people of India that is keenly felt inside Israel. That friendship is deeply appreciated. India and the people of India and the Prime Minister of India are true friends of the state of Israel, the Prime Minister, and that is the situation. And as such, it will remain. A question from the Insider in Greece. When will there be a press conference with the freed hostages, and what have they already said about their days in Hamas captivity? Look, I'll answer this as a human being, not as a spokesperson. These two women, including a teenage girl, have literally been through hell for the last 2 weeks since they were abducted and taken as hostages by the brutal terror organization that tortured and mutilated people before beheading and burning whole families alive on the 7th of October. I'm sure that if these women want to speak to the foreign media about the hell that they have been through, they will. But for now, they really have been through an intensely traumatic experience, and it's important to give them space. A question from Daphne Rousseau from AFP. Once Hamas is toppled in Gaza, who should be the government responsible for ruling the basic needs of Gaza? Israel is examining several contingencies for the day after plan after Hamas is dismantled inside the Gaza Strip. For now, we're focusing on the objective of victory, destroying the terror machine that perpetrated the October 7th massacre, when Hamas committed what is by now, in absolute terms, the worst terror attack in world history after 9/11. It revealed itself, as President Biden said, to be a force of sheer, pure, unadulterated evil, an evil that cannot be tolerated or allowed to stalk the earth a single day later. I cannot tell you exactly who will govern the needs of the Gaza Strip, but I can tell you they will remember Hamas, and they will remember what Israel did to Hamas. Do we have any more questions? We have a question from Jim Williams.
Yes, sir. My question is this. You mentioned that there is the possibility that Israel at the moment is looking at the day after plans. Is one of those potential day after plans a UN peacekeeping group?
I'm not going to get into the technicalities of what plans are currently being considered. I think it's important to remember that what Israel is doing at the moment is repelling an ongoing attack, an ongoing act of aggression from Hamas perpetrated on the 7th of October, when it showed that we simply cannot tolerate its presence in the Gaza Strip any longer, because the presence of a terror machine armed to the teeth, backed by Iran, is not only a force for instability, but has committed unprecedented atrocities against our people. We will, of course, be considering and discussing with international partners a whole range of options for what should come the day after. But one thing is clear: the Gaza Strip will not be governed by Hamas. Once this war is over, after we win, after we secure total victory against Hamas, we will have dismantled the totality of Hamas's military and governing structures inside the Gaza Strip.
May I have a quick follow-up, please?
One quick follow-up from Jim.
Yes, sir. The question is this. President Biden became the first president to visit a war zone that did not have U.S. troops in it. Do you believe, I know that the Prime Minister understands the absolute and total uniqueness of that. Do you think the Israeli people understand the importance of a president coming into a zone where we didn't have any troops?
President Biden's visit of solidarity in Israel was an extraordinary gesture. As you mentioned, I believe it was in fact the second visit by a president of the United States to a war zone not controlled by the United States. After Ukraine, of course, for us, it is the first visit by a president of the United States during a war ever. That led all the news here in Israel during that visit. It was an extraordinary visit that was enormously appreciated across the whole of society, because President Biden came to make his moral position clear, to express a point of moral clarity, moral leadership. We know when the United States expresses such moral clarity and leadership, the rest of the world follows. And it's important to note that President Biden is not only giving the state of Israel his moral leadership and support in its mission to dismantle Hamas, also very clear material support as well, and making clear this is not only a war that Israel must win, it is also a war in which the United States will make sure that Israel has everything it needs in order to win. I think this time really is different, the extent to which the international community understands Israel's right and duty to defend itself, and the strategic imperative and necessity of dismantling Hamas. That is our goal, and the state of Israel and the people of Israel are enormously appreciative to the President of the United States for his moral and material leadership on that matter. Other questions? Question from a coach, if I'm reading that correctly.
That's right. Coach Winehouse from Globe Banner. Do we know if the Red Cross has visited any of the other hostages seized from Israel?
I'm sorry?
Do we know if the Red Cross has visited any of the other hostages seized from Israel?
To the best of our understanding, our hostages have been denied any basic humanitarian mercy. We're demanding that they be given access to the Red Cross and that information on their condition be diverted immediately to Israel, of course, as part of efforts to secure their immediate and unconditional release. We have time for one more question, please. A question from Siddhant Sibal, please.
Hi, sir. I'm Siddhant from Vion, India. My question to you, we saw the conversation between the Indian Prime Minister and the Israeli Prime Minister. So what kind of conversation it was, and essentially what kind of support do you expect from India? We have seen a lot of moral support, but are you hoping or expecting some other kind of support as well, especially at the international institutions?
I mentioned this earlier. We, of course, appreciate the support of India, its people, and its prime minister. They remain true friends of Israel, and we appreciate that. Here at our darkest hour, as we are still identifying and collecting bodies after the horrific October 7th massacre, we, of course, expect the entire international community to stand firmly by our side as we continue with the strategic imperative of dismantling Hamas. That is important not only for the state of Israel's security, our people's security, but also for wider security in the Middle East. And we expect everyone in the international community to stand firmly by our side in this just cause. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.